Peace. Blessings. I haven't been live in a minute, but I think what I have to say I need to go live with it. So I'm gonna say this. How do I put this where I'm trying to find a way to put this where people can really grasp what I'm saying. Um let's talk about basic words and the etymology of these words because that's where you get the real meaning of a word. It's through the etymology of a word, and in which means the original contents that it was used in. And if you look in the dictionary, we have the modern day use of words, but right beside it we have like the sub suffix of came from Latin, it came from Greek. You know the origin of the word, even though the word is shortened. And that's another thing about dealing with the etymology of a word. We say can't, but we know the origin of the word could have been cannot. It does not change the meaning just because you shorten the word. And I bring that up because I want to talk about the word Africa. The word Africa derives from the word Africanus, which is a Roman term, which could be considered a Latin term. And the thing with that word, if you look at the modern day use of it, it says it's the description of the region, or the continent, land region of the continent known as Africa, and the people who are now classified as dark hued individuals or quote unquote black individuals in that region. But the origin of that word was didn't start that way. The origin of the word was Africanus. And Africanus was used mainly to describe European people, what we call white people, even though these people are not white, even though so called black people are not black. I mean, do a comparison to skin tones against anything that is classified as these colors. But that's another subject. The etymology of the word Africa, Africanus, is a Roman terminology, and it was used to describe um, Europeans and their lands. And this even means lands that they colonized. It was mainly used by a Roman general by the name of Cephas of Africanus and his family, because they were like the head rulers in Rome at that time, and they were colonizing a lot of what we call modern day Africa. See how that works? Africanus dropped to the modern terminology is Africa, which still describes European people or hueless people or pale people, whatever you want to say. This was to describe these people and their lands, the lands that they even conquered themselves, colonized. They named it Africanus. But here's the kicker. The region that we know now as Egypt or Kemet was originally Ethiopia. So were the people that lived there. Their names were they were Ethiopians. And Ethiopians are the dark hued people over there in that region on that continent, now known as modern day Africans. That's why Europeans can be known as Africans, because they are the original Africanus, while the dark hued individuals in that region, on that continent, in that land, were known as Ethiopians. The land was the land of the sun, Ethiopia. The people were Ethiopians because they were known for the people with sunburnt faces. See, I don't understand why a lot of people are calling themselves, especially so called black people, are calling themselves Pan Africans. Because to say that you are not African, that means that you will be of pale skin. Understand this. To call yourself an African with dark hue such as mine is inaccurate. You're not an Africanus. You'll be better off calling yourself an Ethiopian, because that will be close to what they called you even as they were colonizing you. Like they were calling us over here the Americans and or Indians. Now, do Indians in this country, on this continent, known as the Americans, South, Central, and North, do we have Africanus in our DNA? Of course we will. Some of us, yes, of course we would. Even though our skin is this color, of course we would, because you have to think these people were colonizing us, meaning they were coming in here to conquer us, and they were raping and taking people to be, their concubines. Our ancestors over here were being raped. So yes, it stands to say that the American Indians do have some Africanus in us, but that is not through the bringing of slaves over here, the Ethiopian slaves over here. That has nothing to do with that. This was going on before that slave trade was going on. And even when you deal with the slave trade, you're still dealing with Europeans, because Europeans were known as Africans. So not every person that came on these slave ships that we still can't find, but not everybody that was coming on these slave ships were dark hue Ethiopians. They were Africanus, Africans. The Ethiopians were being classified as Africans or Africanus because they were conquered. And a lot of them were not just conquered, they was also working with what we call Europeans or white people, the true Africans. See, what we seem to not understand is that wordplay was one of the first ways to hide secrets, to change the whole outlook on something. And that's what they did with these definitions of words. You drop this here, can, not. Okay, we say can't. Still means cannot. Doesn't lose any of its origin. Just like the word Africanus doesn't lose any of its origin. Just because we say Africa, it still means people of pale skin. So I don't know if any of these Pan-Africans know this information, or there are a lot of them that do know this information, but they also know what the European or Africanus knew, that they can get paid off of the indigenous people of America's, North America especially, ignorance. Plain and simple. So next time when these brothers and sisters walk up to you and, hey, Africa, Egypt, and Africa and Egypt, you know, you need to ask them, well, what about Ethiopians? What about that region, Africa and Egypt, before it even was Kemet and all of that? What about Nubia? What about Ethiopia? Why am I African when my skin is dark? Wouldn't I be an Ethiopian more than an African? I mean, just think about it. Reason with it. Turn it over in your mind. If you don't believe me, go look up the word yourself. Break it down. Use logical thinking. Get out your emotions. Get out your programming. Let your Holy Spirit talk to you. Let your intuition, which is your Holy Spirit, talk to you. Where you can see things again. Where you can real eye things again. And see how the wool has been pulled over your eyes. That's why it's called spelling. We're casting spells on you. That's what they did. We're going to take this word, we're going to make it mean something else. And nobody's really going to be the wiser to the original meaning. They're going to just go along with it. Especially people who are lost and don't really know themselves. They're going to go along with it. So if somebody that looks like us comes from that continent saying that they're African, and then we got this narrative about the slave trade, so of course we're going to associate ourselves with that because we've been told that. We've been programmed to believe that. So yeah, I'll say it again. American Aborigines, by way of Europeans, do have African in their DNA only because of the Europeans. This is prior to the Ethiopians, whom the Spaniards had us confused with when they came over here. They even got it written in some of their journals. These people look like the Ethiopians. They was even still using this word in the 1400s. The word Ethiopian, they was still kicking it in the 1400s when they got over here and seen us. Because they had already seen those people over there who they named the Ethiopians, who were the Ethiopians before they became Africans, conquered by the Afrikaners. See, we have to start doing our research on the origin of words that we use, especially the ones that we want to label ourselves with. Because to me, the way I see it, if you're calling yourself an African American or African, period, all you're saying is that you're a slave. It's the same as saying that you're black when you know you're not. It's the same as saying a Negro or whatever. It's a derogatory term when it is not associated with who you are. Period. You're not Africans. Africans are of a lighter hue. We're what we call the Europeans, the Spaniards, the Mongolians. Yes, the Native Americans over here, they are Africans because they came from that continent. They migrated here from that continent. And they amalgamated with the indigenous American Aborigines here on these continents, on this continent, as big as it is. See, this is how they hid your true nature, your true selves from you through trickology. They're changing the spellings of words, the meaning of words, when they full well know what it means. So when you say, I'm black and proud, you're just saying that I'm a slave and I'm proud. When you say that I'm pro-African, all you're saying is that I'm a European slave who has been conquered. Land, mind, in spirit, because you were Ethiopians before you became Africans on that continent. You were indigenous Americans before all of this African stuff even began. And that's just the truth. I know there's a lot of people not going to agree with me, disagree with me, you know. It's all right. The truth is the truth. It has to be out there. It has to come out there. So, all you Pan Africans, I think you better do some more research. That's all I'm going to say. All of you that are following those Pan Africans, y'all better do some more research. Because chances are, the only way that you are African is because of the European, not because of the Ethiopian who were brought here after the fact. Peace, love, and blessings, and I'm done. Out.